I go to the Statistical Bureau. I ask them, can you give me a statistic of every single state average spending of the retirees in the US? And by the way, I don't want an average. I want them in age group. If you're up to age 65, there's a set spending dollars. If you are 65 to 70, there's another bracket. So I have 5 different age groups measuring how retirees actually spending during retirement. Then I run simulation. I run the simulation against real data in the US pertaining the spending based upon that particular state, and I want to find out how successful our retirees are today. And so I create a baseline, then I start applying some typical strategies to that. And those strategies could be such as delaying your Social Security, right? Or work longer, or something else. So I put lots of different strategy. At the end of the day, what I was looking for are 2 things. I want to look for how successful are we in terms of success rate. Success rate defines when I die, when an individual dies in this simulation, they still have a penny left. If it's a couple, the second to die still have a penny left, okay? And the second thing I'm looking for is, so what was the success rate? I want to know how was the population in terms of what's the population actually can spend the average expenses of that particular state. So I'm looking for a scaling factor. So there are 2 things. And so here is a question for all of you. What is the weighted average in the US, the success rate looks like in the US? Weighted average. The couple here means married couple, there's in the household, there's nobody else, just those 2 people. And single will be the person who is single living by themselves. Okay, so we have 16% of you saying that, or about 19% or so, believe that the success rate is pretty high, 80 and 70%. Majority of you believe is low, 55 and 63. Okay, so everyone is good now? So the answer is just the success rate itself is about 69% for couple, married couple. This is a national average, this is not in California. And then single is about 43% from a success rate perspective. All right, and we typically, in the industry, we know that if you have $1 million net worth, you probably are going to make it. Have we heard of that before? You have to have $1 million and then you probably are going to make it. It's kind of like well, not necessarily in California, but it's kind of like, you might be enough for the national average. As a matter of fact, this chart shows you the more net worth you have, the better you are able to spend above the average state retiree expenses. The more net worth that you have. And the reason that you only see million and above as a bracket is because chances are, in the US there's only 13 million millionaires, and that's a very small population compared to the populations here. And that 13 million is not all of them are retirees. And so the more net worth that you have, the better you are able to spend the average of that particular state. And so I'm going to ask you to probably write down this if you are particular states that you are interested in. So the next chart you're going to see is a US map. And I'm going to start showing you 6 different states. What is the population looks like for those people who actually can spend the average retirees' expenses in that particular state. So let's take a look at California first. Couple is roughly about what, 51%? Single is about 37%. What does that mean? Half of the married couple will fail. Majority of the single will not make it. Remember, single in this case mostly are widow. I'm not talking about real single person. These are widows. Majority of them are widow. They're not going to be able to make it. So that's California. Then you have your Texas. About what, 61% and 40% in single. Pennsylvania about 52% and 41% for single. And then Florida, look at Florida, one of the very popular retiree state, only has about 63% for couple and 44% for single. That's in Florida. Most of the retirees migrate down south with a cheaper state. And you have in New York, probably worse, a little bit better compared to California, about 56% couple and 44% single. Arizona, our neighbor, not too bad, 86% or so couple and 62% single. In Oregon, 77% for couple and single is 41 or 44%. So the idea here is not to tell you to stay married. Because married couple, one of us will eventually die out. That's not a message. Every time I show this picture, audience tell me that the conclusion is I should stay married. Yes, but one of you will die first, and the other one will become single, all right? Okay, so with that, let's take a look at, here is the questions. I'm going to start adding some strategies to these data to see if one strategy actually helps compared to the other type of strategies. So the question here is, will reverse mortgage or HACM enhance the retiree's success? Either no, reverse mortgage is a scam, or maybe, or yeah, for those qualified. You'll be surprised that if I recommend client to consider reverse mortgage in some situation, yeah, majority of them tell me it's a scam. Is it a scam? Yeah, thank you. It's a federal program, by the way. Yeah, so the answer here is for those qualifies, actually do help, okay? And I don't have all the qualification with me, but I can kind of briefly go through that. Reverse mortgage, out of the two people, if you're married, the youngest one has to be 62 years old. And your house has to be pretty much all paid for, unless you have assets to pay down the remaining part. And you have to be able to go through a federal counseling program. You have to make sure you go through the counseling program before you get qualified. In California alone, most of the real estate is very expensive, which is good for this type of program, but you cannot take 100% of it. There's a cap depending upon the interest rate today. And there's also a cap on the value you can take out of your house, and that cap, the last time I checked, is roughly about $750,000 something for nationally. So it's not everything that you can take out, there's a limited amount of that. So let's use the another questions here. So assuming that it can improve, so what is the percentage of the population actually improved based upon using the HACM strategy? Is it 5 or 10%, 12, 18%, or 21 or 28%? We're talking about national average. Every state is a little bit different. Right, interesting. So the national average perspective, from a national average perspective, it's actually only 5% for couple and 10% for single. That's a national average. So the state I'm going to show you, I'm going to go back to the same state. If you're taking notes from the previous slide, you will see the improvement. So let's take a look at California. California moved about 10% of the population will be able to make it if they are qualified and use the HACM strategy. And the single moved up quite a bit. And if I looked at Texas, that's also a huge improvement. Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, even Florida has a pretty big improvement. And then Arizona, if you look at the Arizona, it's almost all of them will make it if you're a couple. And part of the reason I show you this is that as you counsel your clients, whether or not they are doing business with you from the financial products or not, migration is actually a good idea, only if your clients are not so stubborn not to move. If they don't want to move, there are some other strategies certainly can help them. So migration is a good idea, and you wanted to be able to include that as part of your recommendations. Now, the problem is not everyone that qualifies should consider reverse mortgage or HACM. And if you look at the chart, you notice that the most improved actually coming from those families within the net worth of $250,000 to $500,000. That's probably the ideal client profile to recommend. Anybody who is above $1 million may or may not necessarily take advantage of it. So that is from the demographic perspective. So before you actually recommend, you wanted to make sure that they fall in the right bucket before you do that. And the other thing is that what is the most beneficial in terms of age group? So in the chart, you can see that all the way to your left, you will see that the older they get, the better it is for them. So what does that mean? When you plan for your client, especially married couple, you wanted to make sure that married couple, you are planning for the last to die. Not planning for the two to enjoy their life. Well, you're doing that too, but you have to plan for the last person to die. And having a strategy like reverse mortgage ought to be considered younger age, especially if you're not taking the entire amount out, only using as a line of credit. If you use line of credit, you need to do it younger compared to the older one. So with that, all of these that I found that one thing is clear is that when we talk to clients,